You're starting, huh?
Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Brazil's Rio de Janeiro to attend the 17th BRICS Summit, a grouping initially conceived as the coming together of emerging economies, namely Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, which saw an expansion being carried out with the inclusion of Indonesia, Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, as well as the UAE and now even Saudi Arabia.
Yes, with India's thrust on supporting the global south, even BRICS has taken on that role like fish to water in the face of inadequate response from the West to its needs. Institutions set up by BRICS, like the New Development Bank, have been leading the charge in facilitating projects to serve the interests of all developing countries.
Absolutely, Gautam. The 17th BRICS Summit is taking place at a time of rising global conflict. There's terrorism, there are trade tensions, there's climate crisis, to name a few, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other leaders will be looking to address all of them and more during the course of the summit.
Yes, and we'll keep a close eye on the proceedings and bring all the latest developments to you as they happen with DD India's team on the ground and comments from experts who will be joining Munmun and I over the next at least 2.5 hours while talking about Prime Minister Modi in Rio, BRICS boost to Global South.
Let's get started.
So Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 4-day visit to Brazil, where he will be attending the 17th BRICS Summit and also undertake a state visit.
Absolutely. On the fourth leg of his 5-nation visit, PM Modi landed in Rio de Janeiro earlier today.
This is Prime Minister Modi's 4th visit to Brazil and is happening at the invitation of Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Of Prime Minister Narendra Modi having arrived at the venue in Rio de Janeiro, where the BRICS summit has now gotten underway, the 17th BRICS summit, and a handshake and a very warm embrace between Lula da Silva, the leader of Brazil, as well as Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Yeah, the venue is the Museum of Modern Art. It was also used recently for the G20 summit that took place again in Rio, the last G20 summit as well. And now BRICS is also taking place in the same city, the city of many hills, verdant forests, as well as the world famous favelas.
So Prime Minister Narendra Modi has already arrived at the venue, and you saw the warm embrace between the President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Brazil is the chair of the BRICS summit this time around, and the next chair would be India. So Brazil will be handing over the presidency of BRICS to India, and India will be hosting it next year, perhaps in July, for all you know. Upon his arrival at the hotel in Rio de Janeiro earlier, members of Brazil's Indian community gave a very vibrant welcome to Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Yes, a group performed Om Gan Ganpate mantra in the honor of Prime Minister Modi. In fact, we're bringing you the images of that warm embrace between President Lula and Prime Minister Modi upon the arrival of Prime Minister Modi at the Museum of Modern Art, which is the venue for the 17th BRICS Summit. And you can see some conversation taking place right when the two leaders have greeted each other.
There are two segments of Prime Minister's visit to Brazil. One, of course, is the multilateral segment, which is the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where Prime Minister has reached. And the second is a state visit by Prime Minister, where discussions will be taking place between the two leaders that you see on the screen, but in Brasilia later, after the 2-day summit concludes in Rio de Janeiro. Look at the body language and the chemistry between the two leaders. The Indian ambassador to Brazil had earlier told DD India that as far as a state visit of an Indian Prime Minister to Brazil is concerned, it's happening after 6 long decades, though Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been there at least on 3 occasions. The first in July 2014, he had gone to Brazil, then followed by another visit in 2019 to attend the BRICS summit, and in November 2024 to attend the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro.
Yes, and as far as BRICS is concerned, Prime Minister Modi, ever since he took office in 2014, he's attended all of them, even during the COVID period when they had taken place virtually.
So the theme of the 17th BRICS Summit is strengthening global South cooperation for more inclusive and sustainable governance. And we are aware that BRICS is now an expanded forum. It had earlier had just 4, then it expanded to 5. That included South Africa, and now it's expanded to 11 full members. There are 12 partner countries as well. And there are 8 invited countries at the heads of state and government level. There are 7 heads of regional and multilateral bodies that constitute BRICS as well in an expanded form. And of course, the expanded BRICS now represents about 45% of the world's population and over 35% of the global GDP in purchasing power parity terms. So in terms of its overall influence and clout, BRICS is very weighty, so to say.
Yes, but if you were to look at Western media, they are trying to paint a totally different picture, aren't they, Munmun? Sense of insecurity, it seems, is there among not just the Western media. It reflects what the Western society feels,
Yes.
that BRICS is a challenge to the global order that has been set ever since the end of the Second World War. It had been proposed as coming together of emerging economies, and they were only 4 in the beginning. Even South Africa came later.
Yes.
And now the number is going up to 11. And very diverse countries now part of the grouping. And this will then, of course, ensure that there will be more in terms of not just the kind of strengths these countries bring together, particularly economic strength with countries like oil-rich Saudi Arabia and the UAE on board, but also the issues of countries that are extremely populous, the India, China already, and now Indonesia as well there. So basically reflecting a lot of the needs of the global South, the funding of the NDB also being directed there. Also, apart from the fact that climate change is the issue that will figure very, very prominently because of the fact that you have President Lula as the host.
Absolutely, and in fact the next COP summit is going to take place in Brazil. So all the more reason why there will be focus as far as climate action and sustainability is concerned. So a lot is packed in really over the next 2 days. There will be several sessions. There are 4 documents that are expected, including of course the Leaders Declaration, the BRICS Leaders Declaration, and there will be a lot of careful scrutiny of that Leaders Declaration, considering the multiple global conflicts that the world is seeing between Russia and Ukraine, or between Israel and Iran, or the Israel-Gaza conflict. So it remains to be seen the kind of wording that will be there, the choice of words in the BRICS declaration, whether that has all been agreed upon, or whether there would be any fireworks unexpected at the end. But the MEA, India's Ministry of External Affairs, has said that there is no reason to believe that there would not be a joint declaration. So perhaps that's a hint which is clearly coming in, that there would be a joint declaration, even though there won't be leaders like Chinese President Xi Jinping, who won't be there for the first time.
Well, the Chinese Prime Minister is going
yes.
to be there, and
Yes.
I think President Putin will be joining remotely. But
Yeah.
well, BRICS serves as a political and diplomatic coordination forum for countries from the global South and for coordination in the most diverse areas.
Brazil assumed BRICS chairship on the 1st of January 2025.
The theme of Brazil's BRICS chairship is strengthening global South cooperation for more inclusive and sustainable governance.
Brazil's presidency focuses on 2 priorities that includes global South cooperation and BRICS partnership for social, economic and environmental development.
And flagship priorities of Brazilian chairpersonship include global health cooperation, trade, investment and finance, climate change as well. We mentioned that, Munmun.
And of course, artificial intelligence. We expect the first ever global declaration on governance for artificial declaration to come up under the presidency of Brazil of the 17th BRICS Summit. Also, the focus would be on promoting global reform of the multilateral peace system and security architecture, besides institutional development.
Now, BRICS is an intergovernmental organization comprising 11 countries. The objectives of BRICS include strengthening economic, political and social cooperation among its members, as well as increasing the influence of Global South countries in international governance. Let's just try and understand BRICS as well.
So what is BRICS? BRICS brings together 11 major emerging economies of the world.
It represents around 49.5% of global population.
It's almost half of the world's population, around 40% of global GDP and around 26% of global trade.
BRICS, which is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, is currently composed of 11 countries, 5 original members: Brazil, China, India, Russia and South Africa, and 6 new members which were admitted in 2024-25.
So these are the 6 new members that have now become full members of BRICS: Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE. So these are the 6 members that you see on your screen. The first BRICS summit was held in Yekaterinburg in Russia in 2009.
Now, there are partner countries as well in BRICS, and these are Belarus, Bolivia, Kazakhstan, Cuba, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda and Uzbekistan.
And of course, there are invited countries, and heads of regional and multilateral bodies are also represented in BRICS, though of course they are outside the gamut of full membership or partner countries. They are strategic partners in a sense of BRICS. So let's get started with our analysis. Joining us for perspective on the ongoing 17th BRICS summit in Brazil, in the city of Rio de Janeiro, our ambassador Mohan Kumar, former Indian ambassador, and also Sameep Shastri, in fact, is joining us. He is vice chairperson with the BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he is joining us from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So I think it's only befitting to give a broad overview first of the 17th BRICS Summit, and who better to start than Ambassador Mohan Kumar. Ambassador, please tell us, what do you think about the 17th BRICS Summit, considering a lot is being said on whether there would be a joint declaration or not, considering that there are so many conflicts. There's Iran also a member. Then of course there is a Russia-Ukraine war which is going on. Ukraine would not be represented, but Putin is expected to join virtually, and then the president of Egypt is also not going to show up. There might be some representative there. Chinese president is not there. Chinese premier is representing China there. So considering all of that in terms of participation and the global conflicts currently underway, what are your expectations?
Thank you very much, Moon, for having me. I think this BRICS Plus Summit is an important one, because 2 firsts really. First time, I think the full expanded BRICS Plus Summit is happening. So I'm very keen to know how the expansion, the new members react to the summit. I'm disappointed some of them are not represented at the leaders level, but we will see how that goes. Secondly, this is also the first time the BRICS Summit is happening after the inauguration of President Trump in the United States. And as we all know, President Trump has set in motion some changes in trade policy, in climate change policy, in terms of America's foreign policy, which have been groundbreaking. And it'll be interesting for me as an analyst to see how BRICS Plus reacts to President Trump and his actions. Because it's interesting, the BRICS itself comprises at least 2 factions now. One of it can be described as anti-Western, the other clearly is non-Western. And in the latter category, I put countries like India and Brazil, which actually want BRICS Plus to stick to its original strategic objective, which is to seek a multipolar world in which there is a fairer distribution of power, so that those countries like India, Brazil and others can sit in the high table, for instance, in the UN Security Council, perhaps a reconfiguration of the voting pattern in the International Monetary Fund. Why have a European head for IMF? Why not somebody else? Those are the kind of issues which the BRICS Plus would like to talk about. We don't necessarily want to throw sand in the eyes of the West or the US just because their policies are not suitable for us. So in that extent, to that extent, India, Brazil, I believe, will not want a confrontational summit in that sense with the BRICS. But then we find, as you rightly said, both President Xi and President Putin are not going to be there. But of course, we have their representatives, and President Putin will definitely address the summit through video conferencing. I think the key takeaway from me and the key thing to look out for is I understand the diplomats have been able to arrive at a joint declaration. That will be huge, Moon, if it happens. Because the G7, which was held in Alberta just some weeks ago, was unable to come to a joint declaration, which is why they had bits and pieces, papers floating around. Before that, the G20 happened, and the G20 was not able to also deal with a lot. And the G20 currently is going through a crisis because of the relations between US and South Africa, which are very, very negative. And as you know, South Africa now is the chair of the G20. So given this backdrop, if this expanded forum, BRICS Plus, can come up with a jointly agreed declaration at the summit level, that will be huge. I'll just make two other points, not to monopolize, and I know you have my co-panelists waiting patiently. The second thing that I think India will be looking for is condemnation of terrorism, especially the incidents of Pahalgam. And if we can have something in the joint declaration which clearly enunciates the position of BRICS Plus leaders that, listen, terrorism, no matter where it happens, is really should be condemned by all. I think that is something that India will be looking for. Last but not least, I also think if we can get something like a reformed UN Security Council and get India and Brazil's name, even if we cannot get a name for Africa, I think that will also count as a significant outcome for India. So all in all, a summit that happens against geopolitical turbulence, a summit that actually happens when there are a wide variety of countries, when a lot of people, as Gautam was hinting, the Western press is actually saying this BRICS cannot hold, because you cannot have Iran on the one hand and then maybe countries like Indonesia, India, Brazil on the other. Our positions are very different. So how will this play out? But if we can come up with a joint declaration by the leaders, I think that will count for something, and that will make the arduous journey towards a fairer multipolar world a little bit more of reality.
Well, let's try and find out. Let's try and find out from Sameep Shastri, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, as to what he's been hearing. He, of course, would have, I'm presuming, had a lot of interest in how the declaration might respond to what's been happening in terms of the trade tensions that have been triggered by Donald Trump, the ascent or the return of Donald Trump to the Oval Office. Sameep Shastri, what have you been hearing about what sort of a declaration is likely to emerge, whether there will be a declaration or not? That is also a question that has been raised.
First of all, namaste from Rio, and thank you, Munmun
Namaste.
for having me, and my co-panelist, Ambassador. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. And as a trade body, we are obviously looking at the trade changes that will come in, and I'm frankly very, very optimistic about it, because all the declarations over the past All BRICS Summit have been very, very successfully executed every year by the chairing country. 5 aspects, that 5 T's that I feel that are going to be really, that India practically taking over the presidency next year, 5 T's that we're really looking forward to is because the first is your trade, second is your terrorism, then technology sharing, and then you're looking at another aspect of trust. Because as you saw that SCO summit was not very fruitful, as Pahalgam was not clearly mentioned and our Honorable Defence Minister Rajnath Ji refused to sign. I feel this is a great opportunity for our Prime Minister to put it on this platform and recognize the negative impacts of terrorism and speak very loudly and clearly on a global platform that, India will not stand against terrorism. Trade is something which definitely has, every aspect that America has done with the tariffs and all the taxes. So a lot of countries have benefited, including Brazil. Brazil is at the lowest trade ever, and they are trading drastically with the US. And but whereas if you look at the self-consumption pattern of India itself, is very huge. Like if you look at, I'll give you a very small trade example that the highest number one selling brand for AirPods is Apple, but the second is boat, and the self consumption of boat itself is within India with 1.4 billion people. So when we talk about trade, when we talk about 50% population, do you really think when we are the manufacturers, we have the resources, we have the oil, we have in BRICS, we have all the minerals, we have the brains of Indians, we have the biggest, India is the pharmacy for the world, we have everything when we talk about BRICS and the global south. So do we really need to export and import with the western part and be affected with their
Right, Mr. Shastri, since
tariffs?
yes, I absolutely understand, and you're putting forth a very crucial point that it is important to look at whether we can really expand trade with a grouping like BRICS, or whether we need to focus or be obsessed with the Western countries. The idea is to have export diversification. The trade numbers have come in though, and they show that the overall bilateral trade between BRICS and India have gone up, but the balance of trade is heavily in the favor of the BRICS bloc if you remove India from the whole picture. I'm talking of the 5 countries, not the expanded 11. Now, Mr. Shastri, also, since India is present there and India would want to take care of its interests as well, which is perfectly legitimate. Now, we understand that India is pushing for trade without barriers, and also business leaders are calling for local currency use besides digital collaboration. So, if you could share your thoughts on this.
And adding to that, the question of again Donald Trump saying that well, BRICS is dead. I've killed their bid to become an alternative to the US dollar.
So I think BRICS currency is far too fetched a thought for BRICS as well, because the best part about this block is that still we are working more in terms of trade and commerce and sustainable development, and we are not talking about geopolitics till now in the BRICS nations. In spite of all our tensions, last year you see that Honorable Jinping and Honorable Prime Minister Modi had a good discussion, bilateral talks also in Kazan. So in spite of whatever our tensions are with China, BRICS as a platform has always been very neutral, where all the countries, in spite of their tensions, have sat down together for the growth and prosperity of the multipolar society that they aim for, like rightly pointed out by our ambassador here. Now, when you look at this aspect that, that one simple logic is...
You mean the de-dollarization?
De-dollarization is that, it already started. If you look at it, de-dollarization really started off with the cryptocurrency, which was primarily America and China as the base centers 20 years back. It's been over 2 decades. Why are we fighting over de-dollarization when they only initiated it themselves and blaming it on as they always do, on the developing nations? Local currency trade is good for any businessman, any entrepreneur, because we don't face the dollar change fluctuation and we don't lose up to 1 to 2% margins when we're exporting or importing. So why is that pressure being created by, again, the daddies that I call, the Western daddies, who have been educating our life for last more than 70 years and not even consider our needs and demands? So I feel that, it's high time we recognize that we can fulfill our demands and we can do our things properly, and we should have a voice. And our Prime Minister in last over one, decade and a half has clearly made us speak at a global forum and made us very proud that even a walking Indian citizen is proud enough to talk about India. We are no more the land of snake charmers. We are land of entrepreneurs, billionaires. We are land of investments. We are land of startups. And this is what the new India is talking about, the new digital India is talking about. And the world, the way they respect us now is very, very different. And I feel that, this entire debate of BRICS currency is just a diversion being created, because our first and foremost aspect is to trade in local currencies between BRICS plus nations and friendly nations.
Hmm. And the other aspect, of course, is whether BRICS can be seen as a forum which speaks in one voice, because that is very critical. I mean, that is at the root of being able to take action on multiple fronts. Going far beyond trade, on challenges of the future, such as well, technology. There's artificial intelligence, as well as climate change. And do you think that that is something that will happen this time around at the 17th BRICS summit?
Yes, we're hoping for a positive declaration again. And sorry, and I also wanted to mention that, as a chamber, we signed yesterday an MOU with the BRICS Women Business Alliance, where we have started up with a new concept called WISE, which is Women in Science, STEM, and Entrepreneurship, which will actually promote and empower women. So these are aspects that, are not just centric to India, but globally. It's a problem where women are not getting empowered, or their voices are not getting heard. And this is something, as a chamber, we are very, very proud that India will be chairing, and we'll be leading this complete module where WISE will take place. Now, coming back to your question, is that, we as a chamber are very, very focused on the declaration when we chair it. And we are looking forward that our Prime Minister puts in all the points. Climate change is very, very important. And post-COVID, we have realized that any global disaster, natural disaster can take place, and climate change is an important part of the future. We are looking at better trade options and free trade agreements to come into place between BRICS plus nations. And we need more options to explore those markets. And if, as traders, as businessmen, more forums or exhibitions or things can be arranged with BRICS plus, can drastically impact the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, which is billion for a trillion, where our exporters can really step out in the market and go and see what all we can export further and grow our Indian economy.
All right, Mr. Shastri, thank you so much for joining us. I believe that's the amount of time that you have for us at the moment. I look forward to having you with us again, perhaps later in the broadcast. But let me get back to Ambassador Mohan Kumar. Ambassador Mohan Kumar,
so
in
much,
terms of how the entire agenda is to be pursued, where these trade tensions are concerned, the trade challenges are concerned, do you feel that BRICS can provide a sort of a solution, or at least some kind of modicum where this challenge could be responded to in a united fashion, which would show to the world that there are ways and means that can be employed to ensure that the kind of skewed business that the largest economy in the world wants to do will not be something that will prevail?
So that's a tough question. I'll try to answer it in two ways. I think the BRICS declaration itself, the joint declaration, even if it is one based on consensus, I do not expect the declaration to name and shame the United States. I don't think that will happen. What they will do is perhaps talk of unilateral...
Even I didn't name the United States.
Yes, unilateral actions leading to trade protectionism or some such thing. Diplomats have a way with words, so I'm sure somebody will come up with a bright kind of language that will express... you will not be left in any doubt about who we are talking about, but we will not name and shame the United States, because a lot of us are right and bang in the middle of tariff negotiations, including India, including Brazil, including a lot of other countries. So we don't want to unnecessarily provoke the
So you are saying that the wording would be cautious in the joint declaration on tariffs, or even on the conflicts?
Yes, Moon. At least on trade and tariffs, I expect the declaration to be anodyne and not name and shame the United States. But having said that, there are a number of things that we could do in practice. You've got the New Development Bank, you've got South-South trade, and while China, of course, dominates trade with the South, there are lots of things that India can do with Brazil. Defense, for example, we are trying to do something with Brazil. Oil exploration, Brazil can help India do clean oil exploration. So a lot of South-South cooperation will happen and should happen. That will reduce eventually the dependence of the BRICS countries or BRICS plus countries on the West in general and the United States in particular. That is what I think is the way forward. We should not be bothered too much about rhetoric and declaration. Do something in practice which will actually reduce the dependence of the BRICS plus countries on the West. I want to react a little bit to the dollar debate, if you allow me, since
Yes,
there
please.
was a fair bit of discussion with Mr. Shastri. My sense is when you had Russia, Iran, China, those are the only countries, in my view, which are extremely concerned about over-dependence on dollar because of the sanctions issue. When sanctions are imposed on these
I wanted to ask you
countries,
about that as
and
well,
we also
because
saw that in Kazan.
will that be
in the
mentioned
last
in the
BRICS summit
declaration
in
as well,
Russia.
the issue of sanctions and unilateral military actions?
That is correct. So I don't think India, for example, is seeking to have a BRICS currency or a replacement to the dollar. We have no objection to trade being conducted on the basis of local currencies. That's something we have done with Russia. We would like to do it with other countries if possible. But I don't think we are under any illusion that the bulk of our trade will still be conducted in dollars. So I don't expect this dollar business to figure prominently in the declaration. Apart from trade, I would say climate finance is the most important issue. As you know, Brazil attaches a lot of importance to climate change. Brazil is the chairman of the COP30 meeting, which is going to happen in the Amazon forest itself, in a place called Selam. And therefore, Brazil would like to seek a solution to the thorny issue of climate finance if possible. Other than these two, I would look for Pahalgam and see if there is something on terrorism. And finally, of course, we will have to look at the regulation framework, the regulatory framework for artificial intelligence. So that, I think, basically could be the outcome of this BRICS plus summit in Rio as I see it.
And when Ambassador Kumar, you say terrorism, is it just terrorism or could it also be cross-border terrorism?
That's an excellent point, and I have no answer for it, frankly, because I think I think it's far easier to get public condemnation of terrorism. I think if a reference to Pahalgam is made, I would be delighted. I would not even be too concerned about cross-border, but can we make
But do
a
you think
reference
so,
to
considering
Pahalgam?
the SCO experience where China and
Sorry?
Russia? Do you think that will happen?
I think there is now
Maybe in the
greater
bilateral
sense-
segment we can be more optimistic, isn't it?
SCO
Yes.
has Pakistan, BRICS doesn't have Pakistan and will not have Pakistan for a long time to
Yes,
come.
Gautam is absolutely right. We don't have Pakistan. And number two, I also think nobody wants a problem on this front. I mean, this is really motherhood and apple pie. I mean, who's not against terrorism, frankly? I mean, come on. Something horrible happened in Pahalgam, and it's clearly a terrorist attack. We are asking for condemnation. I'm not going to go and ask for the BRICS Plus to condemn Pakistan by name. That would be a different ballgame. I'm merely saying something horrible happened in my country, and if BRICS Plus countries cannot demonstrate solidarity to me, why the hell should I be part of this membership of this forum at all? So I think we will get something on condemnation of terrorism and the attacks in Pahalgam.
All right.
Fine, we'll take that forward, the discussion, and more analysts will also be joining Ambassador Kumar to take the analysis forward. Let's tell our viewers that the bilateral relationship between India and Brazil, this is all about the second segment of Prime Minister's visit where he'll be going to Brasilia. And so the bilateral relationship is based on a common global vision, shared democratic values, and a commitment to foster economic growth with social inclusion for the welfare of the people of both countries.
Yes, India and Brazil share close and multifaceted relations which were elevated to a strategic partnership back in 2006.
Both countries cooperate closely in multilateral fora such as BRICS, IPSA, G20, G4, International Solar Alliance, Global Biofuel Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, United Nations, World Trade Organization, UNESCO, and World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO.
Now, as strategic partners, India and Brazil have several institutional mechanisms to coordinate bilateral relations, including a joint commission meeting, that's a JCM, at the level of foreign ministers, strategic dialogue between national security advisors, foreign office consultations as well. Also at the secretary level, trade monitoring mechanism 2 is there, and that's between commerce ministries of the two sides.
India and Brazil also share robust and dynamic trade relations. Let's have a look at some of the key areas as far as trade ties are concerned.
Now, in 2024-25, bilateral trade reached 12.2 billion US dollars, with Indian exports to Brazil at 6.77 billion USD and imports from Brazil at 5.43 billion USD.
Key Indian exports to Brazil include processed petroleum products, which includes diesel, agrochemicals, that is pesticides and fungicides, and chemicals, pharmaceuticals, engineering products, textured filament yarn, and unwrought aluminium.
And key Brazilian exports to India include crude oil, soybean oil, non-monetary gold, raw sugar, cotton, gums, wood, turpentine oil, chemicals, that's carboxylic acid, and iron ore, as well as concentrates.
Indian investments in Brazil are estimated to exceed $6 billion. Brazilian investments in India are around $1 billion.
We are talking about trade and investment. The trade between the two countries has gone up to more than $12 billion, with a slight trade surplus in favor of India. Then we are also talking about from agricultural research to scientific research to digital partnership, which is a very important agenda currently between India and Brazil.
And joining us also is Dr. Parajita Kashyap from the School of International Studies at JNU. Well, welcome Dr. Kashyap to DD India. We also have Ambassador Mohan Kumar, who continues to be with us. He served in France and several other countries. Dr. Kashyap, your opening thoughts on your expectations from the 17th BRICS Summit, considering that it's an expanded format now of 11 full members, and also considering that there is some sort of a dissonance in a sense between the US and the rest of the world as far as the trade and tariff situation is concerned. There are conflicts underway as well. Iran is now a new member of this particular forum, BRICS.
I want to further contextualize this, as we've had our guest Ambassador Mohan Kumar already saying that the US may not be in words painted as a villain, but there will be a lot of noise by certain members, particularly a new member as well, which will put out the US as playing not the kind of role that it should be as far as global governance is concerned or global peace is concerned.
Well, thank you for having me over, and let me begin my thoughts on a very optimistic note. And BRICS has never been anti-West or anti-US. This is my opening line. It was never intended to be like that. And the then Foreign Secretary Shiv Shankar Menon, he had said that there would be no America bashing on BRICS. And true to its spirit, if you look at BRICS, it has more often served as a bridge between North and South. So it's a link. So to say that it's going to be antagonizing United States is not right. Radical criticisms have been coming up from the developed world, but BRICS at best, if I say, is a group of reformers, and they want to bring about changes, and the changes which they are trying to bring about are very concrete and productive changes. Because one thing about BRICS which you must have noticed is the BRICS summit happened without fail. And in between summits, it's not that we only have the BRICS summit. In between summits, we have hundreds of committees and forums, such as the BRICS Forum. They coordinate and implement the agenda. So my take on this is that the group is, far from being just countering the developed world groupings, it has more concrete solutions to provide to the world.
Yeah, Dr. Kashyap, also given the increased membership now of BRICS, do you think it will act in the way of decisions which are consensus based, or do you think it will give more diversity? What do you think on this?
This is going to be one of the challenges to how to arrive at consensus based decisions, because the idea of expanding BRICS fast has been countered especially by India and Brazil, because they don't want to make it look like a pack of Chinese, those countries which are favorable to China. So they are, India and Brazil especially, are very cautious on how membership is going to be expanded, and in that sense they are taking care of the issue of consensus. So decisions will still be arrived at based on consensus, because they are very slow in expansion of BRICS.
Okay.
Okay, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, let me ask you this. In terms of an institutional arrangement, the BRICS doesn't really have a secretariat, but it has two very clearly set up institutions with clear mandates. One is the New Development Bank and the other is the Contingent Reserve Arrangement. Now, if you were to look at what has been done by these two institutions so far, what does that indicate as to how the BRICS would respond to the evolving global situation now?
No, I think the two examples you've given of the New Development Bank and the Contingency Reserve Arrangement, they are actually backed by China. So we'll have to accept the fact that China looms large when it comes to the financial, monetary aspects of cooperation in BRICS. I think for me, the more interesting thing would be if BRICS were to expand itself in terms of climate cooperation, in terms of infrastructure cooperation, and go beyond the New Development Bank. And if India and Brazil can try and do something together, that would bring value added for all the countries. I think the fact that you have countries like UAE, Iran, and Saudi Arabia now part of the BRICS inevitably brings more opportunities in two respects. One, Saudi Arabia, UAE are obviously very rich countries.
Yes.
And they can give a lot of money to BRICS cooperation programs if you make the right pitch. That's the first. And Brazil and India, I think, have the technical expertise and so on. The second thing I would also say is that energy cooperation in the BRICS is now underexploited, but with again Iran, UAE, Saudi, you have a number of suppliers now of energy in BRICS. This was not the case
apart from
earlier.
Russia.
So that will, I think, change the dynamics of energy cooperation in BRICS. I also will conclude this segment of my intervention by saying that the fact that Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia are now present in the Rio summit, they may not be present at the heads of state level, but they are there. That would also mean a lot of attention now is focused on how the BRICS Plus declaration will deal with the American-Israeli bombardment of Iran and the treatment in Gaza. Because those issues are of great importance to Iran, UAE, Saudi Arabia. In the past, you could have just, glossed over this issue if it was just Brazil, Russia, China. But I think now you have an issue there, because these countries will push for some strong language in the BRICS joint statement and the final declaration. So we'll have to wait and see what the BRICS Plus summit says effectively on what is happening in the Middle East.
Okay. Dr. Kashyap, coming to you, there are certain reports that the BRICS finance ministers have now made a unified proposal for IMF reforms. And if I were to give you some details, the proposal is that there should be quota realignment in line with members' relative positions as far as the global economy is concerned. Also, while protecting the quota shares of the poorest members and increasing quotas for developing countries. So, the formula weighted should be by economic output on purchasing power, considering the relative value of currencies, and should better represent low income countries. So right now we know that the West dominates it, the United States and the European Union particularly as far as the IMF voting rights are concerned. So, and this is a proposal that is going to be presented as a shared proposal at an IMF review meeting in December that will discuss changes to the quota system. So do you think that this is BRICS now showing in terms of action that it is serious about reform of the global financial architecture?
I will like to endorse here that by its action, BRICS, by formulating NDB where you have equal shareholding, has already shown the path. So IMF, where there are differential quota system through SDRs, no, unlike the World Bank also, where voting power is unequal, in the NDB, each founding member has equal voting rights. And this is reflective of a partnership of a principle of partnership and balance. Therefore, asking for reform is not something hypothetical that they are doing. They have actually put it in practice and then they are asking for reform. So I believe that their demand for transformation of the Bretton Woods system is quite legitimate.
Okay, can I take the same question to the ambassador? What do you think about this? And there's also another statement that's come in officially, and that says that there would be a new guarantee mechanism backed by the NDB, the new development bank that would be set up, which would aim to lower the financing costs and also boost investment in developing economies. A point that you were making earlier, that there could be gains made from the new members that have been added as full members to BRICS with regard to how the NDB functions and where the funding comes in from. So if you could weigh in on both these aspects.
No, on the NDB thing, I completely agree with you. I think the presence of UAE, Saudi Arabia, and even Iran to some extent, I think it should help matters. And NDB will not be this one-horse kind of situation where you have China doing the bulk of money and of course other countries being beneficiaries. I think that paradigm will change. On the IMF, I think it's useful to also make a reference to the Lawrence Summers encasing report, which was initiated by India when it was a president of G20. When India held the G20 presidency, we had made a strong pitch for a complete, thorough and total reform of the financial architecture. I wish somebody is there, and I'm sure we are doing it. We should be taking that now to the BRICS Plus, and we should be pushing that in the context of BRICS Plus, because it's one thing for the report to be done, and I think a tremendous amount of work was done by both Sri N. K. Singh and Lawrence Summers. I think that now needs to be implemented. And I think the idea that World Bank should be led by an American and the IMF should always be led by a European, again dates back to the victors of World War II, post-95. It's 45. It's like saying that the UN Security Council should have only 5 veto-holding members or veto-wielding members. It's as bad as that. So I think all in all, this is something we should push for. I'm not saying it will happen tomorrow, but what you have to really see is that can BRICS Plus, number one, come up with a consensus declaration? Number two, can it push for things which will increase the likelihood of us entering a multipolar world? What we now have is a very, very messy transition where the United States has lost its power as the only superpower. The unipolar moment is gone. The multipolar moment has arrived, but we are in the middle of a transition. And I think it's in the interest of BRICS Plus countries to push ahead so that we can really move towards a multipolar world where there is a fairer distribution of power in the world, and the countries that are members of BRICS Plus can have more power and more say in global governance. And that's why I like the title of the summit in Rio, which is that Global South Cooperation for Sustainable Governance. And I'm assuming when you say governance, it is actually global governance. Global governance, which is inclusive and sustainable, is in the interest of all countries which constitute part of BRICS Plus.
But would you also say, Ambassador Kumar, that the kind of issues that countries or groupings like BRICS have been raising has started to make some difference as far as these global institutions is concerned? Because you did mention the fact that it's a very outmoded idea now to have an American as a person heading the World Bank, a European heading the IMF, but the change here is that you have a person of Indian origin now heading the World Bank, who's been making a lot of right kind of noises of late.
Yes, I think some incremental progress is being made, but the real irony, Gautam, is that we are talking about reforming multilateral institutions when multilateralism is really at an all-time low in the world, when multilateral cooperation has been found wanting, whether it is the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations Security Council, all the multilateral institutions find themselves in abysmal...
Let's not leave out the World Health Organization.
Correct. So they find themselves in abysmal dysfunctionality, and here we are talking about reform. And that is because we are convinced, when I say we, I mean the BRICS Plus, we are convinced that the dysfunctionality of multilateral institutions is due in no small measure because they are refusing to reform. If you reform those institutions, there is a greater chance of success. So one could argue that the reason why multilateralism is failing at present is because there is a lack of reform. And I think that is the real angle that the BRICS Plus declaration will push when it comes to global governance.
Yes, Dr. Kashyap, we were earlier discussing the issue of de-dollarization, and you've maintained from the very start that this is a grouping which was never anti-West to begin with. You quoted Dr. Shiv Shankar Menon as well. So what do you think would be the stance of various leaders as far as the issue of an alternative payment system is concerned? In Russia, when the last BRICS summit was held, there was a lot of focus for obvious reasons, because Russia would not want the payment system, the international payment system, to be dominated by the US because of the sanctions that it faces. But there are other countries like India which are doing bilateral trade, for instance, with Russia in their national currencies. And there are many such countries, if you look individually within BRICS. So do you think that the issue is really of de-dollarization here, or is the issue of trading in national currencies just to ensure that it's more efficient, it's less costly?
De-dollarization has been one of the mainstay of BRICS, that I will maintain. But certainly, because of the tariff threats, then these countries become cautious. And that is why this is one of the sore areas wherever BRICS is concerned. Trading in national currency is a way forward, because I think all the original members of the BRICS, they feel comfortable in trading in the national currency. So de-dollarization will remain to make some noises even in this BRICS summit, but whether it's going to be achieved fully is still very, very difficult, given the tariff threats that have been unleashed by United States.
But let me just ask you, if you talk about trading in exchanging in national currencies, whatever one buys from each other, to what extent is that possible if huge trade imbalances remain within the BRICS countries themselves?
So there will not be a problem, because there are mechanisms for equalization where you do parity between the currencies. So I don't think that should be a problem. Even we realize that these countries are not at the same level. Even if you look at the per capita income of Brazil compared to India, Brazil's per capita income is higher. But that set aside, these are countries with similar ideologies. I will not say ideologies, but similar kind of projections or expectations in the world, except for Chinese presence, which becomes a little bit of an irritant at times, but not so much that the grouping will diffuse. So this currency issue can easily be resolved. It will not be a problem, even if we trade in national currency, because bilateral trades do proceed through national currency. Let me bring you one important point. So BRICS, apart from being a multilateral grouping, also encourages bilateral trades. It gives more comfort to countries to indulge in bilateral trade. So in that sense, trading in national currency remains a very, very valid option.
So there are reports that have now come in the media on the draft summit declaration, and it talks about an issue that has been discussed here, but would want to know your views on this, Dr. Kashyap. The draft text of the declaration says that we voice serious concerns about the rise of unilateral tariff and non-tariff measures which distort trade and are inconsistent with WTO rules. It does not mention the United States anywhere or Donald Trump. It also warns that such measures, quote unquote, threaten to further reduce global trade. So, do you think that this is one issue which in some way could find mention in the draft declaration, or would Mr. Lula da Silva be more cautious there, or will he do a tightrope walk somehow so that Donald Trump is not rubbed the wrong way?
Definitely what you say is correct. Lula will walk a very cautious road because, antagonizing the United States, who is a big brother in the northern part of Brazil, will be difficult. And, if you look at the volume of finance which NDB has, it is very, very modest compared to the World Bank or even Asian Development Bank. And then United States is a big trading partner. But what I feel that even if there is a modest declaration, even if some few lines are said about it, that is possible because these are big countries, the original members of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, all are big economies and they carry sizable weight within their region. So, if they can at least, a kind of a small kind of an admonition, or if they can just put it across so that, a group, that's what is the beauty of multilateralism, that you can take on a big country, big partner by being part of a group. So he will walk a cautious route, but a declaration with a very, very, carefully wording is what I would expect.
All right. Well, we're waiting for hearing on what is happening really on the ground. We've seen Prime Minister Modi already reaching the venue of the BRICS Summit, the 17th BRICS Summit, being greeted there very, very warmly by President Lula at the venue there in Rio. The first session is all about reform of global institutions. We're awaiting hearing more about that, and let's hope that that comes very soon. We're taking a quick break at this point, but I request you to stay with us, Dr. Kashyap, as well as Ambassador Mohan Kumar, and also viewers.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Johar.
Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
ये वाला दिखाना गया तेरा प्राइस मनी. कुछ इन्वेस्टमेंट भी कर लेती. आते समय कर लिया मोबाइल से. कहाँ? गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज में. हाँ, RBI रिटेल डायरेक्ट मोबाइल ऐप है ना. रिटेल डायरेक्ट स्कीम द्वारा इन्वेस्टमेंट यानी मैच्योरिटी पे गारंटीड रिटर्न्स. नो ब्रोकरेज, नो हिडन फीस. मान गए? आपको नहीं, ऐप को.
RBI कहता है
जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए.
geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Rio de Janeiro for the 17th BRICS Summit. Remember, Brazil is currently the chair of the BRICS Summit, but India will be the chair of the 18th BRICS Summit. So there will be a handing over of the gavel, in a sense, between Brazil as well as India, from President Lula da Silva to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That will be historic, but that may happen on day 2. For now, the focus would be on the sessions that would be underway, where the focus primarily to begin with would be on reform of global governance as well as on peace and security, considering the global conflicts that are underway at this point in time. Earlier, we saw how Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received very warmly by President Lula da Silva at the summit venue, where there is intense security. Our correspondent had earlier reported about that as well. And of course, world leaders within the BRICS setting are gathering there, and there are some people who've missed it as well. Some leaders like Chinese President Xi Jinping, the Egyptian President Mr. Sisi, as well as the Israel's President, but they have their representatives there, and the Russian President is joining on video link. So President Putin will be present, but virtually.
Yes, the voice of every BRICS nation, and there are more of them this time around. And this is the first time that we'll have an expanded BRICS with quite a different kind of a composition compared to earlier, expressing itself hopefully in one voice with the BRICS declaration as well, where a lot of critical things are being looked out for as to how BRICS contextualizes the ongoing situation, the geopolitical situation in the world, where you not only have conflicts, multiple conflicts blazing across different parts of the world, but also trade tensions, and you also have issues related to climate change that keep cropping up, and it has to be seen how the issue of terrorism, which India is very keen to have incorporated with a specific mention of Pahalgam, how is that also given space, whether it's given space in the manner that India has sought. All these things are very, very critical, which is why the entire world is focusing on Rio this time around.
Absolutely, Gautam, and the BRICS summit is going to continue for another day. That is, it's a 2-day summit, and after that, of course, the focus shifts on the bilateral segment of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, where he would be going to Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil, and will have bilateral talks, and there will be delegation level talks and exchange of agreements between India and Brazil. So let's tell you a little about that. India's strategic partnership with Brazil has continued to intensify with a number of high-level engagements, and that includes defense ties. So defense ties have deepened as well.
Yes, Defense Cooperation Agreement was signed in 2003 and was ratified in 2006. It established the Joint Defense Committee, that's the JDC. 7 JDC or Joint Defense committee meetings have been held so far.
Yes, the high-level defense exchanges and visits have occurred, with 14 major exchanges occurring in the last 2 years. This also included visits by the Indian Air Force Chief to Brazil and Brazilian Army, Navy and Air Force Chiefs to India.
And defense cooperation between the two nations has also included defense training. Since 2007, 134 defense personnel, that's 70 from India and 64 from Brazil, have been trained through short and long-term courses, joint military exercises and sailing regattas.
Moreover, 2+2 political military dialogue was initiated in 2024. A strategic dialogue mechanism was established in 2006 for discussions on regional and global issues.
Counter-terrorism is one of our core agenda. As far as BRICS is concerned, they will talk about it in some form which I'm not privy to at this point of time. But on bilateral front, I can tell you that between India and Brazil, Brazil has supported us on this issue. And in this visit, we are trying to conclude an MOU on counter-terrorism, which will be another step forward between the two strategic partners.
Also, Brazil has become an important partner in India's development of biofuels. Brazil became the co-founder member of Global Biofuel Alliance, that's the GBA, which was launched in September 2023 during the G20 summit, which was held in New Delhi.
India's participation in Brazil's hydrocarbon sector has grown in recent years. Brazil is India's largest upstream investment destination in Americas and the third largest globally.
Indian companies, that's the OVL and BPRL, have invested $3.5 billion in Brazil's upstream sector, participating in 4 projects, including successful collaborations with Petrobras on BM Seal 11 and BM Seal 4.
Brazil is a key partner in India's biofuel development. An MOU on bioenergy cooperation was signed in January 2020.
First joint working group meeting was held virtually on the 6th of August 2021. As noted earlier, Brazil is a co-founder of the Global Biofuel Alliance. It was launched during the G20 summit in New Delhi in September 2023. India's national biofuel policy and Brazil's Renova Bio programs aim to enhance biofuel blending.
Brazil signed the International Solar Alliance, also known as ISA agreement, in 2019 and also ratified it in December 2020. So, Brazil and India are closely cooperating on ISA, which was founded by India as well as France and various countries. Earlier, between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn joined in, and then other countries joined in as well. And of course, the Global Biofuel Alliance, which was announced by India as part of its G20 presidency. So, we continue to be joined by guests. Dr. Aprajita Kashyap, School of International Studies, JNU, continues to be with us. Dr. Kashyap, on the issue of sustainable development, how would you characterize, and there's Ambassador G.S. Mukul as well, who's joining us, former Indian ambassador. Such a pleasure to have you, Ambassador, as well. Dr. Kashyap, since I was asking you, how significant would this BRICS meeting be, or the summit be, in the context of promoting sustainable development? Brazil has played a leading role, and India, of course, has been a leading light in a sense when it comes to coming up with various initiatives, ISA, CDRI, and the Global Biofuel Alliance, and the next COP would also be held in Brazil. I think we'll go back to Rio de Janeiro, the family photograph between the BRICS leaders.
And you can clearly see and make out who is representing their country in that particular picture. So
10 countries represented right now. So 10 full members of BRICS on stage in this family photograph. A symbolic moment that really marks the start, in a sense, of the 17th BRICS summit.
Yeah, I don't really see anybody standing there on behalf of Russia at the moment, so that also indicates that we will have virtual participation perhaps from President Putin.
No, there is on the extreme left, I think, Mr. Lavrov, is present,
yes,
the
Lavrov
foreign
is
minister
there.
of Russia. So there are currently, as we
yes.
can count,
Yeah, extreme
10
left
members.
Lavrov is there.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi right in the middle, next to the President of Brazil,
And you
Lula da
have Premier
Silva.
Xiang as well.
And yes, the gavel will be handed over on the second day perhaps of the BRICS summit to India, as it's the next chair of the BRICS and will be hosting it next year. So as far as BRICS are concerned, besides the full members, there are 12 partner countries, there are 8 invited countries at the heads of state and government level, there are 7 heads of regional and multilateral bodies that also participate. If you look at the figures, and they represent around 45 to 50% of the world's population, the expanded BRICS that is, and over 35% of global GDP in purchasing power parity terms. And the theme of the 17th BRICS summit is strengthening global South cooperation for more inclusive and sustainable governance. There will be at least 4 sessions that will take place over the 2 days of the summit, the focus being on the reform of global governance and also on peace and security, and on strengthening multilateralism, economic, financial affairs and artificial intelligence, and environment COP 30, which is coming next, I believe, and global health. So those are the focus areas as far as sessions are concerned, and all eyes will be on the declaration.
Well, certainly, and there's been a lot of speculation around it as to how the declaration will contextualize, mention, address issues such as what has been happening around the world in terms of conflicts, unilateral military actions, the issues of sanctions as well, apart from the fact that there are trade tensions, tariffs, which has been triggered off by the return of Donald Trump to the Oval Office, and again the issue of terrorism with what has happened in India, in Pahalgam. Also the issue of climate change, which is plaguing every part of the world, particularly now. We see incidents of extreme weather taking place from areas such as within India, in the hills, in Himachal Pradesh, in Uttarakhand, as well as even in Texas, where there have been flash floods.
Yes, so we'll take that forward with you, Dr. Kashyap. How important do you think the issue of climate action and sustainability be this time around at the BRICS summit?
Brazil, as you know, has been, with its Amazon agenda, has been a very proactive leader on world fora as far as environmental issues are concerned. And so has India been. So I think in this BRICS summit, we can expect, and Lula has been very known for his environmental politics. He has an indigenous person from the Amazon on his ministry, Marina Silva. So if you look at his kind of governance and his diplomacy, is very famous for his green diplomacy, which was not the case with his predecessor. So Brazil, with its Amazon agenda, its green diplomacy under Lula, it will highlight things like climate justice, climate finance, and most importantly, and these are the areas where India also pushes through very, very solidly. Another area which I see being highlighted is taking a holistic approach to sustainability. So far, what have we seen? It's mostly the economic and environment. So development is the agenda which is to be balanced. This time around, we can see social issues also being balanced. So we'll have 3 sectors being balanced: social, economic, and environmental being balanced together. The other aspect that I would like to highlight is that BRICS already has a climate change working group, which reflects the intent of this grouping towards sustainable development. So it's going to be a win-win situation, at least for environment.
Okay, wonderful. Let's hope that something constructive emerges there on that front, which is direly needed. Thank you for joining us and talking about it, Dr. Kashyap. Let me now bring in Ambassador J.S. Mukul as well. Good evening to you, Ambassador Mukul. Since this is the first time that you've joined us for the evening in this rolling program that we've got on the BRICS Summit, your opening comments on how do you expect really these leaders to be addressing these diverse issues where, of course, there are national interests that have to be reflected as well, which not always find common ground even among these members?
Good evening and thanks for having me. Yes, we are expecting, I think, 4 documents, 4 deliverables to come out of this summit. The most important, obviously, is the leaders' declaration. There is also to be a leaders' statement on governance. There is to be a leaders' framework on climate issues. And of course, there's a priority given by Brazil's presidency about health and diseases. So the challenge, if I can put it that way, the challenges that the declaration would face, in my view, would be 3 or 4 major areas. First, let us be clear that the BRICS is not an anti-Western organization. It is a grouping of emerging economies and it's a non-Western, but it's never taken an antagonistic position. So having said that, the challenges which if I can point out are one relating to, of course, from India's perspective, the most important being the terrorism. And I would be expecting a very strong formulation on terrorism in the leaders' declaration. Also, the issue of tariffs has become important. President Trump has been speaking of BRICS is dead. It's certainly not dead. It's just been expanded to 11, and I believe there are 30 other countries wanting to join as members or partners, so it's far from dead. But be that as it may, basically the question is that there will be a formulation on because unilateral and unilateralism of this kind and completely, I mean, taking this to the level that has been happening, the global south is going to assert itself. Third would be a very strong agenda coming out of the global south issues, particularly Brazil and the next chair India are the leading lights of the global south, apart from, of course, other countries in the BRICS, which are all members of the global south. So there would be a strong element there. There would also be challenges in terms of the formulation which comes out with regard to the Middle East, because there you have Iran on the one hand, which has just been the country attacked, and there is of course the Gaza issue. So that would have to be nuanced, and I'm sure some language will be found which can be acceptable to everybody. So I'm very optimistic that there will be a declaration, and that would be, I think, a very apt conclusion of the BRICS summit, given the fact that the G7 could not reach a declaration very recently. So that is where, that would be by way of my opening remarks.
Okay. Now, we understand that President Lula, the chair of the BRICS summit, has started speaking. He's saying that Brazil is hosting the BRICS summit for the 4th time, and he's also particularly saying that international law has become ineffective. He says that most of the countries that are part of the BRICS are its founding members. So basically, he is making a point on international law, meaning that he is referring, I believe, to the global conflicts that are going on, and how the UN resolutions, for instance, or the international law, they are being violated repeatedly. What do you make of this in the opening remarks of President Lula, Ambassador? And there's Professor Anshu Joshi also, who's now joined us. Welcome, Anshu Joshi. Yeah.
Very appropriate that the BRICS chair, President Lula, is making this point, because we have seen this repeatedly happening, whether it is in terms of the conflicts that are happening, or in terms of the multilateral trading system. The WTO has become dysfunctional because of some countries. This unilateral and kind of tariffs again being imposed is something which again goes against the multilateral system. So these are the issues, I think, which he would have in mind when he is referring to the fact that the international law has been circumvented. And of course, I'm sure he will also come to the reform of the multilateral institutions as we go forward, because that is a major priority of the Brazilian presidency, both in terms of the United Nations Security Council, where we could expect a reference to India and Brazil being endorsed, and also with regard to the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, World Bank, etc. So I think all these things he has in mind when he makes this point about the international law being circumvented and is being under threat.
Well, setting the tone is what perhaps is being done by President Lula at this point of time. And Anshu Joshi, it's interesting that he's also taking potshots at how the NATO countries are now being driven, in a sense, to allocate 5% of GDP to their own defense because of how things are shaping up with that conflict that has been raging on in Ukraine. What do you make of this sort of tone setting by President Lula, where he's clearly saying that there is, it seems, misdirected allocation of limited resources? What should be spent for the welfare perhaps of people will now be spent on arming up, sort of joining an arms race.
If I can intervene, there is breaking news coming in. President Lula has referred to the Pahalgam terror attack. He says he rejects the attack on Kashmir. He mentions the Pahalgam terror attack in his intervention. Very quickly, Ambassador Mukul, how significant is this? The chair in his opening remarks of BRICS rejects terrorism, mentions the Pahalgam terror attack. Is it again a diplomatic victory for India and for all those countries who are victims of terrorism, and a slap on the face of those who have been perpetrating and supporting terrorism?
No, absolutely. I think the President mentioning this is a clear indication that we will see a strong formulation in the declaration also, because it's not just now India which has been talking about this. I think it's wider, and therefore I think we expect a very strong formulation on terrorism in the leaders' declaration.
Professor Anshu Joshi, how significant is this? India did stick its neck out when it came to the SCO Defence Minister's statement, and now this, and we've been on an offensive, on a military offensive and then on a diplomatic offensive to counter the terror attack in Pahalgam. And would you say that this is a huge diplomatic success as far as India is concerned at a multilateral grouping where there are more than 30 members, if you count the full members, the partner countries, the multilateral institutions there?
Definitely, and after not signing the joint declaration released at the SCO meeting recently, India made it very clear that it's not going to tolerate any kind of terrorist acts, or for that matter the states that sponsor terrorism. So the message was loud and clear, and just after that now our Prime Minister is attending this very significant BRICS summit, and the kind of statement Lula has come up with, wherein he has condemned the brutal Pahalgam attack, this terror attack on India, is not only the diplomatic victory for India, but when you see when you look at this whole agenda of Global South, and when you see at the very objectives of BRICS, strengthening counter-terrorism initiatives is one of the prioritized objectives for BRICS as well as for the whole Global South. And when we look at the member nations, so I will just quote Argentina, because our Prime Minister yesterday was in Argentina, and Argentina has also faced the brunt of terrorism for a very long period of time. So Argentina was also among those nations who condemned this brutal Pahalgam attack and supported India. So coming at this BRICS summit now, the kind of statement Lula has come up with indeed makes it clear that at the platform of BRICS, strengthening, boosting counter-terrorism initiatives and supporting this global fight against terrorism is one of the prioritized objectives, and Brazil not only bilaterally but also multilaterally supports India from the platform of BRICS.
Yes, and can we expect a similar support then to emerge from other members of the BRICS as well. We know that President Xi is not there, and China is the all-weather friend of Pakistan. But apart from that, Ambassador Mukul, do you feel that other members will also echo the kind of sentiments that are being mentioned by President Lula? We can also recall the fact that the MP's delegation led by Congress MP Shashi Tharoor was the one that had gone to Brazil and engaged extensively with not just government figures, including the Vice President of Brazil, but also civil society and intelligentsia as well there.
No, I think absolutely this has been a major outreach of India, both in terms of what the government has done and also the parliamentary delegation that you refer to. And I think whether this is echoed in the statements of all the other leaders, that remains to be seen. But I expect that this will find.
I think we have the PM's address taking place now in the opening plenary.
तो ये तस्वीरें हम देख रहे थे, जो कि जहां पर क्योंकि जो सभी सदस्य देशों के जो प्रमुख हैं वो अपनी अपनी
He was making his intervention there with the focus being on peace and security and reform of global governance. This is just the first session, the plenary session or the opening session of the 17th BRICS Summit. There are 3 more to go, but we are standing by to know what the Prime Minister has said and what are the suggestions that the Prime Minister has made on this forum on the issue of peace and security as well as reform of global governance.
Yes, the normal convention, Munmun, is at these multilateral gatherings is that only the chair's statement is broadcast and normally you get printouts or whatever, online releases of the statements of other readouts of other leaders.
Yes, absolutely. So, yes, going back to the significance of President Lula's statement on terrorism, Gautam, you can take that forward.
Yes, it is indeed very, very a diplomatic success really for India, considering what's happened in the recent past. Ambassador Mukul, isn't it? Because we saw how our Defence Minister had to really take a stand there at the SCO Defence Ministers meet and say that we are not on board with this declaration, which does not mention the issue of terrorism in the manner that India wants it to be reflected. And now that President Lula has put it across right in terms of where in his first address at the session where he's setting at in the first plenary, then we can expect it to be reflected in the declaration itself, which will have to be, which conventionally is unanimous.
Yes, all decisions of the BRICS are by consensus, but I do not expect that anybody would object here, because SCO is a different dynamics, because with Pakistan present there's a different dynamics in SCO, whereas in the BRICS, but nevertheless it is a huge diplomatic success of our outreach. And the fact that we have been making this point very clearly, very forcefully and at various fora, and I think the message has gone across very clearly that terrorism has to be in the front and center of many of these.
And what do you make of the speculation that this is the reason why President Xi is not there, because he knew, or the Chinese side knew, that this is something that will happen? The BRICS declaration will mention Pahalgam, and since China is Pakistan's friend, at least President Xi did not want to put his name to it, to this declaration, which is why he sent his premier.
Well, we can speculate on the reason why he did not come, but I mean, the fact of the matter is that China will be very much part of the declaration. It is the way these multilateral organizations work It is the delegation ultimately, irrespective of whether President Xi is there or not, China will be part of the leaders' declaration if there is a consensus declaration adopted at the end of the summit. So, as I said, we can speculate. Maybe that is one of the reasons contributing. I really do not know what prompted him not to come. But the fact of the matter is that the terrorism is going to be a major takeaway from this summit, it looks like, especially with President Lula setting the tone. And if I can also go back to the point that you were raising earlier about the 5% GDP, the NATO, the 5% GDP, I mean, it is very, very surprising that the 0.7% commitment which the developed countries have to provide 0.7% of the GDP as development assistance or aid to the global south or developing countries was not forthcoming, and now these countries have raised their defense spending to 5%. I mean they have been reneging on their commitments throughout from Monterey, etc., that they had to provide 0.7% of GDP, and none of the developing countries, to the best of my knowledge, has been meeting its commitments to provide this assistance to developing countries. And now, as we hear that the NATO, and I think that is why President Lula has also mentioned that fact in his opening statement.
Yes, also Ambassador, the current Indian ambassador to Brazil has said that in the bilateral segment we expect an MOU or a memorandum of understanding on counterterrorism between India and Brazil. It seems that a lot of political capital has been put in on this by Brazil on the issue of counterterrorism. Itself has been a victim of terror attacks. There were school shootings in the past. There was a Brasilia attack in 2024. And would you say that that shows that, you know, the list of countries that don't have double standards of on terrorism is increasing?
No, I think there is a increasing sense that terrorism has to be tackled with a firm hand, and I think that is the message coming out. And especially President Lula mentioning Pahalgam by name, I think is very significant. And as I said, we expect a strong formulation. What the exact formulation will be, we'll have to wait and see. But a strong formulation on terrorism in the leaders' declaration when it is adopted tomorrow.
Okay. Another issue, Dr. Joshi, is of the reform of the United Nations Security Council. Now, this is something which is extremely basic to the mandate of BRICS, which is the reform of global governance institutions, including the UNSC. And President Lula has spoken about the need to include new permanent members in UNSC, and India, of course, is part of the G4, and India has also put forth a proposal where it has not just asked in the past, in the last couple of years, the representation of the G4 countries, which includes Brazil, but it also wants the representation of the entire developing world in different forms in an expanded UNSC. So do you think that this is one issue again that will definitely be mentioned in the BRICS declaration, but something which will also gather momentum from here on?